Evening. I see that attendees are already arriving. This webinar will be in English. I want to give people another minute or so to actually arrive because I see the number of attendees slowly growing. So I will be back with you in 1 minute. Oh, that was one click too many. So good evening and thank you for your time. Today I will be joined by three very esteemed speakers about, well, some overlapping subjects, I can say so. Before we actually start this webinar, I will do a little bit of introduction about the chapter. In a moment, I will also share a video by our chapter president. But first of all, good evening and welcome to this English webinar about cyber resilience. In roughly 2 hours, we will be listening to three speakers from two different organizations, and we aim to be done around 9 o'clock for this webinar. And we will register the two CPEs with IC2 on your behalf if you registered your IC2 member number with us. Normally, this takes about, well, let's say about 2 weeks to be registered, so please bear with us. And if you don't see those two CPEs registered, you can register them yourself with reference to this webinar with date and time and the title. The mothership knows about this webinar. And if you don't know how to do this, please feel free to reach out to events@chapter.ic2.nl. Then now about the two presentations. The first presentation is around a platform that will help you become more resilient. Both speakers, Vincent Schijven and Nico Nijenhuis, both work at TÜV Noord, and they will present about Cyra, a tool that can help organizations to see to what extent they are cyber resilient actually. And the value to this platform is mainly aimed at those organizations that do not have to be compliant to all the known standards, but they do want to become more cyber resilient. And especially with, well, NIS2 around the corner, it is very beneficial to have a standard to see where improvements can or need to be made. The second presentation is done by Rob van der Veer, someone who has presented with us in a previous session, who will explain about what OpenCRE can do for you. And I think we can all agree that comparing standards with each other is a daunting task. And after I talked to Rob yesterday on our dry run, one thing is clear to me, and it is that if you adhere to multiple standards, this platform will definitely show you which rules you already ticked off or which ones are overlapping. And I'm probably not doing it any justice, so I will ask Rob kindly to explain later in more detail. One of the other things is that I would like to ask you to put all of your questions not in the chat, because that tends to fill up quite rapidly and I can't see any difference between what is a question or a smart remark. So if you use the Q&A button in the bottom, you can ask those questions. And if you could actually mention the name who the question is aimed at, I can actually sort them out on my end. And that keeps it a little bit more clear. If we may run out of time, and that could be the case if we have a lot of interaction, we will ask the presenters to still answer them, but that will be done over email later on and will be picked up post the event. One of the questions that I get asked quite often is, how about the recording? Well, this webinar will be recorded. And after this webinar is done, it needs a little bit of time to actually land on Zoom's cloud. And then we will download it and clean it up a little bit. So we have all the mumbling in the beginning taken off. And then we will share it to YouTube. Again, this is done by our beloved volunteers, and it will take a couple of days to actually publish this. So without further ado, let me start the video. Let me switch to another screen. Yes, this is a video by the Dutch chapter president, and I hope you will enjoy this. All share sound and optimize for video clip. So here you are.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Brenda Langerijk, and there are 3 things I would like to discuss very briefly. First of all, a big thank you to all our volunteers of the event commission that make this event possible. Without them, there is no such thing. Of course, a very warm welcome to our speakers. They will be introduced later on. There is an opening in our IT commission for volunteers. If you would like to do something in your spare time, then contact the board members. The second thing is about the numbers. There are approximately 190 people that signed up for this event, and we have 1,100 people that we email on a regular basis from the chapter. The third thing, if you want an opportunity to receive continuous education points, in addition to attending this event, then it is possible for ISC2.org on site to write an article. Please do read the admission specifics before applying for this. This was all. Thank you very much and have a very pleasant evening.
And thank you for that. And with that, I would like to introduce Vincent Schijven and Nico Nijenhuis. Can you please start your microphones and cameras, gentlemen? Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. There you are. First of all, I'm honored that Nico is actually joining us, because I understand that Nico is, surprised face, that you are in the midst of your exam period for your MBA. So thank you for your time. Vincent, I would like to hand over the mic to you. Again, if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A and I will address them at the end of this section.
Hey, yes, before I share my screen, thank you, Björn, for the introduction. I feel a lot of pressure now that I'm introduced as an esteemed presenter. So let's see if we can live up to that. So my name is Vincent. I am managing what we call the Cyber Competence Center of TÜV Nord in the Netherlands. And in this we do certification and inspection business on cybersecurity. And together with my colleague Nico, we will do a presentation on cyber rating. Just briefly, my organization is involved in many certifications, but among others in supply risk management, supply security, but also, of course, ISO 27000 and those topics. And now very lately the IA management system certification, so the IA 42001. But Nico, please, can you introduce yourself? Then I'll start sharing my screen.
Yes, I can. I'm what I would call a partner in crime with Vincent in the TÜV Nord certifying body. I'm an auditor for information security and privacy within the Netherlands, and we also both joining the Cyber Competence Center within the Netherlands. And for our mother company, TÜV Nord, I'm the TIC manager privacy. So that's privacy only, but that's where we roll out privacy services all around the world. And Björn, thank you for your warm welcome. But it's not the MBA; it's a Master of Law. I do have a technical background, but I always wanted to combine it with my Master of Law as well. So no problem.
Different title.
probably the same effort. But thank you for that. Vincent?
Yes, I will share my screen. And this is also the moment where I have to make sure that Nico can do the disc jockeying at a later moment. Okay, we are going to tell you something about cyber rating. And if I'm not mistaken, you can see my screen at this very moment.
Yes.
Very good. Okay. So cyber rating, this is something that we co-developed together with the Cyber Resilience Center of the Brainport region. And from now on, I will call it Brainport. It's not the same, but what a terrible name they come up with, and with ASML. And of course, we all know ASML. This was because ASML was involved in their supply risk management program, and they saw that the way they were rating their suppliers was similar, but also different than Philips, NXP, DAF, and those kind of companies. And they had the ambition to harmonize this in one approach, where both the supplier of these companies could benefit, but also the big customer. So in this example, ASML. And that is the moment where we started working on something called cyber rating. If there are like open doors in my slides, then I'm sorry about that. But this is normally how supplier risk management programs look like. There are numerous of lists used, but there is no standardized method or framework used in general. And also the way of following up on these lists could differ. Well, indeed, this was the case in the Brainport region. So for ASML, Philips, and likes, and the ambition there came along to harmonize this. And this is not just because they were having lots of time, but this was because of an ambition to make something that, as I mentioned, the supplier could benefit from, but also the big OEM. To avoid double work, to have one way of looking at suppliers, and to make sure that if a certain customer already did something on rating a supplier, then others could also benefit from this. And why was this? Of course, suppliers are an essential part of the business, of the business continuity, and NIS2 is pushing this. Although NIS2, the translation, the legislation, is not completely there. It's not completely rolled out and explained, but still, looking for your suppliers, asking tough questions to the suppliers is part of that. You need to know what the supplier is doing at a certain moment, and this is pushing our initiative very much. So we developed SARA here, and this is developed by, well, not by the government, but by commercial organizations for the business. So by the business for the business. But we did receive some money from the government to further develop this. So this is good. And we built a platform, and Nico will explain more into depth, based on ISO 27000 and ISO 27701. And again, Nico will explain. So we started off with security and privacy, but we at start already understood that in other sectors, in other parts of the business, other standards could be added and had to be added. For example, OT technology, which is completely different, of course, than IT. And we built this cyber rating in such a way that there were 4 levels of controls, and per control 3 maturity levels, with the idea that not every organization has to live up with the same amount of rules, controls, and needs to be on the same level of cyber resilient. And because we worked with ISO certification, so with ISO standards, sorry, this could also grow into a path towards ISO certification. This is not mandatory. This is an option. This is a benefit. If the organization doesn't want to do that, perfectly fine. If they want to grow towards certification at a certain moment, to ISO 27000 certification, then they already did something with the controls in these standards. How do we present this in an online tooling where in as understandable as possible Dutch, but also English, we put the controls into an online assessment, an online self-assessment, so that a company can see where they are at a certain moment, but also how they can grow. So the next steps are in the platform, so you can see where you are and where you are growing, as long as you are really honest with to explaining it in the platform. But we did keep the connection with the underlying ISO controls. So if a certain company is looking for support, external support, or looking for reference on the internet on ISO, on the ISO standards, the controls are still there. And this is a self-assessment platform, but if a company should explain something to bigger customers, they can optionally look for and go for certification. Not mandatory, but this is something which is in the platform and can be asked for, so that a certification can bring extra confidence towards a bigger customer. And last but not least, so this is a self-assessment. This is an optional certification, but we also store the metadata, so that we in a later phase we can bring this back to the customers in the platform for benchmarking. So for example, if you are a construction company, that you can see how you are doing compared to the construction business. Not one-on-one comparison, but benchmarking towards the branch. And we think this will give a benefit to companies to see if they are well ahead of competition, or maybe behind of competition. Last part from my side, it was easy for ASML to ask every supplier, okay, go for ISO 27000. And ASML is so big, probably they could ask too, but they knew that ISO 27000 was too big for many of their suppliers. They have really big, but also really small suppliers, and really mature, but also, to be honest, some immature suppliers. But they could ask that. But the platform was designed in such a way that it should bring value not only to ASML in this example, but also to the supplier itself. Because the supplier is not only looking for, okay, I have this big customer asking for something, but he should also benefit from it themselves, because otherwise the chance of starting with the platform, starting with taking measurements on cyber resilience is less than if he also benefits this for himself. And you can see on the screen that the platform is designed in such a way that the value is not only for the company itself, but also for other stakeholders in the circle. So insurance companies, branch organizations, which are more and more important to certain sectors, but also, of course, to government, who is asking more and more on cyber resilience. And this too is an example for that. This is the moment where I will hand over to my colleague Nico, who will go a little more into depth on what is under the hood shelf of Cyra. So Nico, if you can,
yes, let me see.
Let me check if you
control. Yes, I can. Thank you, Vincent. And for the audience, if there's any desire for you to just jump in, just open your mic, as long as we're not talking to each other or through each other, a lot of people at the same time, that will be okay for me. We are here for you. Looking at the Cyra, this is more the draft. At the left side, you see the basics. We are using in Cyra existing standards. we didn't build new standards. So it's based on the ISO 27001, the newest version, by the way. And we divided it in 4 control sets, of which the lowest level is a very accessible, what we call entry level, for every organization to step in. And gradually, cumulative, the top level is the total set of controls. Those controls are then even further divided into 3 levels of maturity. So these are the probably well-known maturity levels of implementing those controls. And I have to be very sharp here. We are looking at ISO 27001, but not the management system. ISO 27001 is a management system, but it refers to an annex with the controls. We are looking at the controls themselves. So this is more information security than the management system. I'll get into that a little bit more later on. So no management system, and that also means no requirements for internal audits, risk management, or management reviews, or components like that you could see in the management system requirements. We've had a supply chain focus in the choices that we've made, and you could already see that in the privacy controls that we included as well. Those stem from the ISO 27701, a pretty new privacy information management standard, but we've only made a selection from the processor controls because those are the organizations that process personal data on behalf of another organization. Designing this, we present this to organizations in a self-assessment questionnaire. It starts with a closed questionnaire whether a specific topic is applicable or not, and if it's not applicable, then the organization could just select not applicable. As soon as it is applicable, then the organization has to choose which level of implementation, referring to the maturity levels, most fits that organization. We have 3 levels: ad hoc, best effort, and defined. And you probably can imagine that defined is more easy to pinpoint or to demonstrate because there everything is perfectly documented, while in an ad hoc atmosphere, it's more it's less documented, but could pretty well be performed anyway. As soon as the organization is answering these questions, which they are doing themselves, it's a self-assessment questionnaire. They will also provide reference to the proof. So it's an assessment. It's not a wild guess or something that they want to do or expect somebody else is doing. It's a self-assessment. So this reference of proof is very easy for the organization if they want to manage the proof itself, or to work together, or to provide this to another one. And it's also very useful, of course, for an external auditor if that is desired. So then the proof registered in the tool will be used for the validation of the question or of the questions. If not applicable is selected, then here is the reasoning for the non-applicability, and then that will be assessed. Sarah is in readable language, or at least that what we try to do. The standard is not really easy reading material for a lot of organizations, especially the smaller organizations, of which information security is not core business. And we are referring to explicit controls. So even if we wrote it down differently or split it up in several maturity levels, it's referring to explicit controls. So if desired, organizations can also and always find extra documentation like the implementation guideline or other training material that is out there. So organizations are provided there with good references as well. There was one question about the BO, the Dutch governmental variants of the information security standard. This one is explicitly referring to ISO standards. And of course, it's supported by an online tool, this self-questionnaire, but also the external auditing using the same tool. Looking at CIRA, we have 27001 as the ISO standard with an Annex A of controls. From there, there is an ISO 27002, which is an implementation guideline, and the new version of that one divides it already in 4 categories. We are using that as well in CIRA, and we use the implementation guidelines or sections of that and the controls in the structure of the control sets and the maturity levels. But I mentioned, of course, that there was also something to do with privacy. We added some privacy controls as well, and this is coming from the Annex B of the ISO 27701. We've done a lot of thinking and we did a lot of creativity, but a lot of this is done using well-known standards already and other sources, of course, ISO 27002 and 1, ISO 27701, the GDPR itself, the NOREA NBA maturity model, the CMEM and CMEM-C maturity models. We've used the CISO top 10 through ASML. We did our own internal reviewing, and ENIPO is an organization specifically for privacy, and that group was used for the selection of the privacy controls. Looking at the new standard, new versus the old one, we have 114 controls in the old version and 93 in the new version. Probably you already know that it looks less, but quite frankly, it's just a little bit more. But we are only looking at the controls, not the clauses of the harmonized structure, or in the old version, the high-level structure. So we are looking only at these controls in 4 categories, and we added the privacy control, the privacy category. 140 through to 93. Some of them are not changed. There's some split, some are grouped, some are renamed, and a few are added, and they are up here. Unfortunately, for those that cannot read Dutch, it is in Dutch, but there are 11 new controls to consider. They are in CIRA as well. Looking at how we divided that in those control sets, you can see here that the entry level also resembles what is called the bare minimum for some, or well known, and we added 2 privacy controls there. This is the division of the controls. And Vincent mentioned NIS2 already. Looking at the controls there, in the entry level, there's already a third of the NIST controls, if you do a mapping of those NIS2 controls in Article 21 of the NIST Act. Well, looking at the controls itself, this is the model. So 4 layers, 4 control sets divided in maturity levels. And this is how we cumulative group them. Advanced is the total set, 100%, and the entry level is 25% of the controls. Looking at the controls itself, and this is in Dutch as well, but you probably can imagine that, first of all, it's very small. I can try to zoom in a little bit more for you. There is a logical graduate division here. If you look at the personnel, the people control here, the first in the entry level, we're looking at screening, and furthermore, in the basic level, we look at confidentiality and contracting, while in the intermediate, we are talking about the changes or the ending of the responsibilities there. And at the last control set, advanced, we look at the disciplinary measures. It is okay to do this disciplinary procedure, of course, further on, or earlier, but this is the moment in the control sets where it is validated or assessed by the organization itself. So a logical division of those controls. And I think this one is back to you, Vincent.
Yes, maybe just going back briefly to the footprint here that we normally use is, so the idea is here that a company for themselves can decide what the appropriate resilience level should be, entry, basic, intermediate, or advanced. And for that, we use a number of questions before going into the self-assessment to determine what could be an appropriate level. And of course, this is for the company for themselves to decide. But what is also happening here is that, for example, companies like ASML, they are determining, okay, what do they think is an appropriate level for a supplier? And if they are not on that level yet, that could be, but what is then the travel made for this supplier, and in what time frame until they are at a certain level? ASML is using the Collier model for this, so determine the dependency on suppliers and the impact if a supplier stops their business at a certain moment. They're using that framework, and we're now in the phase of that. Both companies themselves in the platform, but also bigger companies like ASML are looking at, okay, what should be and could be an appropriate level, because and ASML was very open on this. The level of resilience of a supplier towards a customer was something that was asked for, but this was not something that was determined or demanded. But this is changing now. You see that the bigger companies, they are not only asking for, okay, what is the appropriate level, what is the level that you are right now, and show me that this is actually the level, the honest level, but also that the company, if they are not in the appropriate level yet, that they are starting to grow and becoming more and more resilient. So the framework, as you see on screen, is for suppliers themselves to see where they are at a certain moment and how they can grow, but also for customers, like in the corporate region or in governmental region, to determine, okay, where is my supplier now, at what level, and what is the appropriate level in future, and what is a timeline that is appropriate for this.
So for some organizations, basic level 2 is appropriate. So it's not necessary for all organizations to see this as a roadmap to get into advanced level 3.
Yeah, good one. One question, Vincent. Sorry to interrupt you. One of the questions that was asked by someone in the Q&A: are there control objectives of the 4 SIRE control sets? And I think this literally ties into this current slide. Is it correct?
Could you repeat the question, please? Sorry.
Are there control objectives of the 4 SIRE control sets?
Nico, you want to step in?
Yes, and I'm trying to figure the question out.
Yeah.
What the question really is.
Yeah.
Controls themselves have objectives, so that's in the standard itself. Mm-hmm. So it's not linked directly to the control objectives, but the controls themselves. I don't know if that is answering the question, but it's a very interesting question, but I'm not quite sure I get the question.
Yeah, maybe Reinier, can you please rephrase your question? then maybe we can clarify that a little bit more. And on top of that, is it fair to say that the maturity levels are based on a preventative, detective, corrective controls approach?
I think that's the one for me, Vincent. The answer is no. The controls themselves in the standard have these attributes, but this is not the division or the ruling in the the division in the model. No. So there could be preventive controls divided over in those sets. So no.
Yeah. Okay. And Reinier just came back. You can have multiple controls needed to meet one control objective.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that is a clear answer. It's not maybe or it depends. So I like those answers, like in any standards. That one was answered already. Then we have another one. Can an organization end up with different levels, for instance, entry-level controls E3, but more controls in basic set B2, B1, or do you always have to handle the lowest?
If a organization is going forward to see where they are themselves, then they can determine what should be and could be an appropriate level, and they will go for that and just see where they are and how they can grow. If the organization is going for to have an independent certification, then the lowest level that has been determined is the level of what has been given on the certificate. Okay. So, for example, if the organization has the ambition to go on a basic level 3, and we see that some controls are on basic level 2, and he's going for, okay, I want a certificate, then the certificate will be on basic level 2.
Yeah, so it's the lowest, let's say,
Yes.
confirmed level that you have.
Correct, yes.
But but still there could be individual controls that are scored on B3, but the certificate is always the lowest level.
Yeah, okay, because that is a measured result where the answer is this is what you have obtained, but there is growth potential for B3 or I2 or whatever, and that is your own objective in your growth path. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Maybe before the questions, Nico said a very interesting remark. There were more than one, Nico, but I was referring to one especially that was not every organization has to be at the same levels, or so not every organization should be at level advanced 3. That's not a part of the model. The model says that for every organization, a level could be appropriate, and a growth path will be presented, but it doesn't have to be. The organization themselves determine what is appropriate, but also looking at a supply chain, an important customer could also ask for a certain level, and always use the way of explaining. If you are a supplier of ASML, let's go for that one again. And you are the supplier of printing paper, then you can imagine that there are different requirements on security than when you are, for example, in the R&D process for the newest EUV machine. Then for sure that the level of what they would like you to have at a certain moment is higher than if you are the supplier of printing paper, with all due respect of the supplier of printing paper, of course. But we can totally understand that there will be a difference in requirements there, and that is also okay. What is more important than to know where a company is, then more important is that the company is, let's say, on a travel to become more cyber resilient. Because if the company is at E1 at a certain moment, for sure they will benefit when they see that becoming more resilient, more mature, that they will benefit from that. So the travel is the important part here. Okay, then we're going back to the slide that Nico already saw. This was, okay, who's using this at this very moment? So corpus now, like ASML, and customers of ASML are already using the model, and of course via ASML we are in contact with many other similar companies to get them on board of this model. And just end of last year, the Dutch Railway said, okay, we will join this. Dimitri Verzandvliet, he mentioned also in the ISC2 days that he is using the SARA model as a rating of their suppliers. They are using it internationally. So that's, well, we're very happy with that. And we see that more and more branch organizations are stepping in. So of course, because we started in the high-tech construction, FME and Metaalunie as the leading branch organizations in this sector, they stepped in at first. But we now see that, for example, healthcare is joining. Healthcare is totally different than the high-tech sector, but they also have similarities, that they have suppliers, they have overlapping suppliers, and they understand that they need to do something with their suppliers and need to know where they are and how they can make sure that there is growth at a certain level. Also via DTC, so via the Digital Trust Center, we see that many organizations like the Cyber Resilience Center Brainport, FERM in Rotterdam, and also others are joining in. Just recently, the drink water operators, I had to translate this with Google. I didn't know in the right translation, but so the governmental bodies for drinking water, they stepped in and said, okay, let's do this. And also agri-food and the maritime sector are now joining in. So it's growing and growing, the footprint that is using SARA. And maybe it's also good to explain where we are and what the direction is where we are going. So the intellectual property of SARA is now into a non-profit body. So this was part of ASML, TÜV and Brainport, but this is now in the independent and non-profit body to make sure that this is not leaning too much on our effort or of ASML or whatever. And we're now in close contact with the CCV. And CCV is like the NEN, like in Normalization Institute. They are coming more from the physical security, but now are stepping in the direction of the digital security to do the management of the SARA standard. So now the management of the standard of the SARA standard is done by a few experts of TÜV Nord and of ASML, but we want to put this in an independent body where lots of stakeholders are present. And we're also looking at, okay, can we put the exploitation of SARA, and this is not a commercial exploitation, but the exploitation also in the with the CCV organization. Now I mentioned this already when we started. This was starting from IT and privacy, because we saw that was the most important part to solve at the short term. But of course, we understood that this was not going to last forever to have only IT and privacy. So we are now in the phase of expanding with the OT controls, and for that we are using the BIAX, and this is let's say a translation of the ISC2 and the CESER. And we are in the phase of expanding with the health controls coming from the NEN 7510. And we are in a project, Nico is involved in a project with the Rotterdam Harbor and other stakeholders there to add specific controls for subversion. And we are focusing only on the digital part of that, but we are adding controls on that. And of course, we are looking at what is happening with NIS2. And can we make the connection directly with NIS2? And what we are presenting here is not something like okay, you're NIS2 compliant when you are on level X, Y, Z. That's not something for us to determine, because who in the end will determine what is NIS2 compliant? It's the customer who is under NIS2 regulation, who is asking for to be compliant at a certain level, what he's asking for. So if ASML is going to their suppliers and asking, okay, I want you to have this, this, and this, then in that supply chain, that is what on supplier security is the NIS2 requirements. So we are keeping away from being NIS2 compliant on this, but of course we are looking at what is in NIS2 and make the translation to be as close as much as possible on that. Of course, we are looking at how can we further develop the platform to add functionality on that, because now this is an online assessment. This has an audit functionality. This has benchmarking. Benchmarking is not open to the outside world because we want to have as much data as possible to make sure that there is no one-on-one comparison. But we're adding functionality here, and of course we are looking at, okay, what is already there in the market, and maybe some of you are aware of the, I'll use the Dutch word, risicoklassenindeling digitale veiligheid. So this is a way of looking at risks on digital security here, and this is now on the platform of the Digital Trust Center, developed by and with the CCV, and we are also looking at, can we map to that one? To make like a roadmap on cyber resilience from very immature companies to high mature companies, maybe in the end ISO certification or even beyond. So we are looking at a roadmap for that. And that was the last slide of what we had to present for tonight.
Yes, there is one question left in the
Very
queue
good.
because Nico was typing very hard to get all the questions answered. But from your experience, do you already see references to CIRA levels in RFP processes?
This is starting to grow. I know that so commercial organizations are asking more and more for CIRA on a certain level. I know that also some municipalities in northern Brabant. Sometimes I have to look what is the English word for this. So the top 5 cities in Brabant, they are asking for CIRA and they are accepting CIRA as well. Mm-hmm. So this is Eindhoven, Den Bosch, Breda, Tilburg, and Helmond. So they are accepting and asking for CIRA as well. So it's not yet in RFPs on TenderNet or whatever. They are still on the level of asking for ISO 27000 or IEC or whatever. But I think it's just a matter of time.
I think so too. I mean, from what I understood from both of you yesterday during the dry run of this event, you are seeing that organizations that do not really adhere to a specific standard do want to be cyber resilient, even though they don't want to go the full length of it. But they also want to offer their services to companies who have the same mindset. But how do you line up? So making this a framework to understand one another is a very good start, I guess.
I think we have to, and I will hand over to you, Nico. What we have to be aware of that we are from a certification body, so we think ISO 27000 is the holy grail. But to be honest, for some companies they have a different opinion on this, and we can discuss about that. Maybe not tonight, but we can discuss about it. But for sure, for some companies, ISO 27000 is too big, too far, too expensive, and they think they don't need it. And also we can discuss on that. But where they are now and then stepping forward to ISO 27 is a too big step. And what we try to offer here is a path, a growth path, but also let's say stages with the option of growing towards 27,000. But it's not and I repeat this again, this is not something that you have to grow to 27,000. That's something for you to decide, or for maybe for your big customer. And this is a commercial decision that you will have. But this is stepping into in the gap there is before ISO 27000, because we call it ISO 27 Lite. I cannot use this. Nico will slap me using this, but
Yeah.
then you know what I mean. This is like a growth path toward that one.
Yeah, I understand where Nico is coming from. Either you do it or you don't do it. It's not in between. I
Yeah.
kind of am. No, I understand. And one last question: financial institutions have to meet the DORA for operational resilience. Are there any ideas to map DORA to CIRA to see what is missing or is already covered? And in addition, can CIRA help as a framework to measure DORA or NIS2?
Yes, so we did a mapping already. This is not in this presentation, but we did a mapping on what is in DORA. So we have somebody at ASML looking at, okay, what is in a certain legislation and what does that mean for a certain sector? And he comes from the financial sector, so he understands what is happening there. So we did a mapping there, and big parts of what is asked in DORA, we can map this towards the CIRA framework. But there, for sure, there are certain things that are not in CIRA that are asked in DORA. So yes, we did the mapping. We are in contact with among others the ABN AMRO, who is also in the circle of trust with ASML. But as with many others, this is taking lots of time to do the mapping, to have this, to grow this. We see this now with OT security. This is taking lots of time, getting people on board. So this is a growth path. Let's call it that way.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on this whole platform, both Nico and Vincent. With that, oh wow, I see a lot of abbreviations pop into the Q&A. For NIS2, you must take into consideration all the NIS 27 and ASA. How do you? Sorry, there is a question in Q&A still coming in. Hold on. For NIS2, you must take in consideration all the ISO 27012, ISO IEC 20001, ISO 30111, ISO 29147, ISO 17788, and a lot of others. Sorry. And ISA 62443. Sorry, Gregoras, if I cut you off. How will you do the mapping based on your maturity level?
Okay.
I would have the question if this guy is asking this is working for a certification body, because we are fond of numbers here and have an ISO standard, and he has a very big list of ISO standards. But then maybe Nico, you can, if you want to step in for the in-depth answer.
Yeah, well, I cannot really relate to this requirement in the NIS2. So if there is a reference to these explicit standards that must be taken into consideration, please also provide me with the article. I will look into that. I'm not aware of that. What I am aware of is that the maturity levels are evaluated first by the organization and later on by the external auditor, based on the controls as we define them in CIRA. So it's not a NIS2 maturity level. It's an ISO standard like validation, and the maturity level will be related to that and not to any NIS2. You can refer, of course, you can cross-reference ISO standard, ISO controls, I have to say, to the NIS2 requirements. That I've done, so I cannot relate to the specific question. That is not what you can always do.
Okay, I hope that this is an answer for you, Gregoras. But that also brings me, in a way, to our second speaker, Rob van der Veer. Because first of all, let me thank you both, Vincent and Nico, for your time, effort, and input on these valuable subjects. Judging by the Q&A that all of a sudden started to get out of control, I think that people had to digest this a little bit and then come up with the questions. So thank you for your presentation, and I will now go to our second speaker of tonight, Rob van der Veer. Rob, like what I said in my introduction, I probably am not doing it any justice if I say you can compare two standards with one another. But what Gregoras actually mentioned here is how does it all line up? And I think, to be fair, this is a really nice step to your presentation, if I'm not mistaken.
It is, Björn, it is.
Yes.
And when we were both looking at OpenCRE closely yesterday, I noticed you almost fell off your chair. So
yeah,
that was
a lot
a
of
good
extra
reaction.
work.
And so everybody fasten your seatbelts.
Yeah.
No, thank you very, very much, Björn.
Yes.
And yes, thank you everyone for joining on this talk about OpenCRE, to be found at opencre.org. It's an open source OWASP project of which I'm very proud. And I'd like to do something unorthodox by starting with a demo. I just would like to show it to you, real brief, give you the fast forward power demo so you can instantly get a feeling of what it is. And we'll go into the details later. This will go too fast, but it will give you a good idea, I think. So if I'm correct, you can see my slide. If not, I'd like to hear about it. And this means that you can also see this overview. And this overview means an overview of what OpenCRE is. A gigantic catalog, an index for security requirements, process requirements, technical controls across major standards. It's sort of the consensus represented in all the security material out there. And it's ordered in categories and subcategories. And for every requirement, we have links to many, many different standards. And we link currently to about 15 of them. And I can search this gigantic catalog, of course. For example, when I search on session, I get some session management. I want to know about session tokens. Here's a common requirement. Generate a new session token after authentication, which brings me to its common requirement page at OpenCRE, which shows the requirement, and it shows all the things that you need to take care of from different perspectives. Verification, weakness, coverage by NIST, which has an extensive document about this in 53 and in 63. An OWASP cheat sheet about session management. And every link is also a deep link, which brings me to the corresponding material in which this is covered. So depending on whether I'm an auditor, whether I am a tester, developer, I can look at the relevant information. The description of the threats, for example, the relevant threats from KPEC, and also a rule in the OWASP ZAP tool that helps me to identify, to test for this specific requirement to be in place. And we have all these standards in OpenCRE, and because of that, we can do cool things. We can, for example, we can search. I just searched on session, but they can also search on XML, which brings me to all the relevant resources and the common requirements. I showed you browsing. I can do map analysis, pick any standard, like, for example, OWASP SAM. And if you don't know this, this is a secure software development framework about processes. And I would like to link this to 27001 Annex controls. And here we go. On the left-hand side, all the controls by OWASP, SAM, and on the right-hand side, the related controls and the strength of their link with these controls in 27001. So it's very easy to map standards to each other. And we have all these standards also in content, with the exception of 27001, of course. But we have all these standards indexed also when it comes to their text, which means that we can put that in a large language model because, right, it's 2024. That's what you're supposed to do. So let's have a look at what that looks like. This is our own chat model. It's basically the first security specialized chatbot in the world. It's a large language model that was built on, of course, learning from the internet, but also learning in context about all these security standards. So if you ask a question here, like, for example, how often should I threat model in an agile team? Now, it goes through this gigantic large language model to come up with an answer to this prompt. And it says you should perform this iteratively. It should be done on a regular basis and when new features are added and etc. And if you want to learn more, you can go to this particular coverage in SAM, or you can go to the corresponding common requirement about threat modeling right here at OpenCRE. And there you can see the link to the ASVS for verification, the DevSecOps maturity model, NIST coverage, the NIST SSDF on threat modeling, OWASP cheat sheets on threat modeling, and also OWASP SAM that talks about threat modeling. And this case is typically how you integrate this into your software development lifecycle. So that's OpenCRE. And we're doing great. We received a large grant from OWASP to further develop our system. Standard after standard is connecting with us and tool after tool. Just recently, OWASP SAM joined. And also the Cloud Security Alliance has embraced OpenCRE as their platform to link to other standards. Let's dive into it a little bit deeper. And before we do that, a little bit about myself. I have a long history with security privacy, starting in the AI industry, by the way, which is also a reason I worked on an AI standard called the 5338 AI Lifecycle. I work for Software Improvement Group, where I started the security and privacy practices about 10 years ago. And if you don't know Software Improvement Group, we measure software quality, maintainability, security, privacy, and many more to help organizations to get software right. Next to SIG, I also advise the European Commission and NCSCs. I'm an active contributor to several ISO IEC standards. And for OWASP, I contribute to SAM. I founded the OWASP AI Exchange, which feeds directly into standards on AI security. And last but not least, my topic of today is OpenCRE. I started that initiative about 4 years ago now with a great team. And let me tell you why we started OpenCRE. If you write a document on security, let's say a national standard, or for some industry, it can also be a company wiki or Word document or PDF with security coding guidelines. Then you want to focus your writing on the specific stuff and refer your readers to the generic material for more details. Otherwise, you'll have to copy and paste all the material from all the resources and it will get outdated. So you add references, several links to related sources. And that's pretty normal and a good idea, right? Well, it sounds easy, but it is not, because you have to deal with an overload of standard and guidelines out there. What you see here is an overview of an EXO report. There's just a list of security standards, and it's more than 200 pages. I'm preaching to the choir. You all know what an issue this is. The available information is bulky, fragmented, complex, confusing, constantly changing. And it's not because it's necessary to have a lot of standards and it's necessary to have complexity. We don't need it at all, but we have it. And there are historical reasons for it, psychological reasons, political reasons, commercial reasons that we have to deal with this today. And we need to appreciate that. So if you're an engineer, a tester, a security officer, you want to buy software and set requirements, it's hard to select and find appropriate information on security to do your work. Also, if you're writing a standard, it's hard to refer your readers to other sources because it's a bit of a mess. There are many, many standards, and for most part, they talk about the same thing. But you want to refer people, and that is unfortunately fundamentally broken. First of all, it takes a lot of time. It's tedious work to create mappings between your work and all those other standards. Because you have better things to do, you're going to make some mistakes, you'll miss things, you refer to the wrong sections, or maybe not you, but I have done this. And your references, they lack structure, they're just a flat list. It's not clear why things are related or what these different weaknesses have to do with the topic. Links get outdated. I know, and you probably also know, many current security standards of which half the links are not working anymore. This is just something that we need to deal with. Standards change their structure, sometimes their location, then you get broken links, and the result is that deep links are avoided. You only see a mention of the section, then you need to look it up yourself, if it still exists, right? You all have seen this problem and experienced it. And also, there may be some really good resources that are missing because you're not familiar with them as an author. Or you choose not to include them because you can't add everything, because then you also have to maintain that very long list. So referring to standards is broken. And because of that, either you get a list of flawed references, or what happens, authors decide to cover the reference information themselves. Yes, the reference problem is solved, but this typically results in inconsistencies and incompleteness because it's not the author's expertise per se, and the information is not updated automatically. And this phenomenon is the cause for the bulk, the scope creep, the fragmentation, and the quality issues that security documents face today. It is the lack of the ability to have efficient and future-proof linking to resources that actually contain the information that you want to convey. If only references could be more complete, have structure, stay up to date. Well, that's what OpenCRE is for. It's a repository of references that stay up to date. What does it look like? Well, this is the primary use case of OpenCRE. The standard has a hyperlink to the OpenCRE website specifying the ID for the relevant common requirement. In this case, it's 764.507. And that page shows deep links to all the standards on the same topic. Plus, it shows links to related topics that allow you to explore things to check, things to test, how to code deserialization, how to prevent XXE, the entry in the top 10, some rule in the DAS tool, and information about the corresponding threat. And you know what this means? The end of mapping, no more mappings. That's our goal. That's our North Star. No more mappings. You only need to link to the corresponding common requirement in OpenCRE, and by doing so, you link to everything that's relevant. So what it is in a nutshell is OpenCRE.org is the website. It means Open Common Requirement Enumeration. We released the first version about 2 years ago, after about 2 years of preparation. And when I say we, I mean the integration standards projects of the OWASP Foundation, together with Spiros Gastratos, but also with many, many other people who join in to make this a success. And the goal is to create links between security standards at OWASP, but also beyond, sort of to unlock the standard landscape. And we did this with a lot of help, especially from the OWASP Top 10 team. So what is OpenCRE? Well, an interactive database for smart access to security standards and guidelines when you design, develop, audit, test, and procure for cybersecurity. It links and unlocks these resources into one unified overview, allowing easy referencing, searching, browsing and asking questions. So it wants to be one resource that links to all other resources. It's the standard to rule them all, but also to respect them all, because it doesn't introduce a new standard other than the consensus of how topics are related to each other, which is represented in sort of a semantic web or a graph, if you will. We'll talk more about that later. So today, OpenCRE maps a wide range of security standards from various organizations, and we can do a bunch of nice things with that. One of the things that we're working on, I'm quite excited about it, is that now we unlock these, public external standards. In the same way, it's an open source system, right? We can allow organizations to deploy their own OpenCRE with their own internal secure coding guidelines policies, which means that users will be presented with an integrated overview of security policy, rules, requirements, guidelines containing organization-specific text, but also links to the corresponding external resources, and also the large language model and the search function and the browse function and the mapping will all work on this internal policy. So your whole set of internal policies and guidelines and rules and standards can be unlocked by OpenCRE. Technically, this is already possible, but we need to make it really easy, which means automated segmentation of documents. That's what we're working on right now. And we hope to release it before June, because then we hope to present on it at the Lisbon Application Security Conference. Why are we doing this? Why aren't we doing this in some company or startup? We believe that the only way to achieve this is through open source, only to get the collaboration of the standard organizations. And it's been our personal quests for the last years to try to create more unity in standards. And I learned that you cannot merge initiatives. You cannot say to 5 standard initiatives, why don't you guys work together? Because you're basically doing the same thing all over again. You cannot create super close collaboration between these organizations. And I appreciate that. Something else needed to happen, and that something else was OpenCRE. Now, let's have a somewhat slower demo so that you can actually tell what is going on. I want to start with a resource, just like the example resource that we were discussing. And this resource is the existing cheat sheet about secret management at OWASP. It talks about how you manage your secrets in typically your software development lifecycle and in your application. What are the best practices? A lot of information here, but not all information. No, because you want to refer. And here it is, a link to OpenCRE. Just one link, you click on it, and you have access to all the requirements that are part of secret storage, and also some links to sources like the DevSecOps maturity model practices, of course, the cheat sheet that we were just at. We link back, of course, and that's the whole idea. And that's also why OpenCRE is self-maintaining. A link to secret management at SAM to show how you implement this as part of your software development lifecycle, and a nice project, a tool developed by Jeroen Willemse and team to allow technical teams to do labs, to play with secret storage, and to discover several worst practices, bad practices that you want to avoid. So if we click on one of these requirements, we're seeing more details. I'm clicking on store cryptographic keys securely. Again, we arrive at a common requirement, but it's a level deeper. It links to how you verify it, the corresponding weakness, the coverage at NIST, and hyperlinks to, again, topics at the cheat sheet, cryptographic storage, and key management, because that is what it's all about. Linking to relevant other requirements, such as secret storage, of course, cryptography, very relevant, a process to explicitly document key and secret management, which is more about governance, and a link to the requirement for secure deploy and build, because that's a closely related topic to secret management. So what else? Well, you can search. I've demonstrated that. You can browse. So let's do some browsing. You see the main topics here at the top of the hierarchy. I can go to technical application security controls, and then go to authentication, for example, and then credential directives, and then allowing long passwords. And here you see an whole overview again of cheat sheets, proactive controls, how you test for it, a lot of the threats. And the more standards we add, the more the user may be overwhelmed, which is why we are working on user profiles. Every user can have a profile that you keep in your session or as a user of OpenCRE that tells you which standards you are interested, what technologies you use, and you will only see the elements that are relevant to you. So if you say, for example, I never want to see NIST again, you can remove that. And whenever you are referred by any standard or resource to OpenCRE, you will not see those standards that you've indicated as I don't find them relevant for my use case. So that's one of the advantages of OpenCRE. Yeah, there you have it. Everything linked with OpenCRE, and we have built it. OpenCRE is operational right now and open source. And to make it work, we first had to overcome a number of hardships and battle a couple of monsters. So let me take you along what it takes to solve the big problem that's behind OpenCRE. And then I will move towards your questions. First of all, what did we do to make this work? Creating an administration of how everything maps to everything is impossible. That is what the industry is doing right now. But if you want to cover 1% of what is out there, it's a gigantic, exploding amount of work to set up, but of course also to maintain. It's very tedious work, but also error prone. The way we solve that is by introducing what we call common requirements. These are generic security topics, and the standard only needs to link a section to one of those instead of all the other standards. And the great result is that if two sections in different standards link to the same common requirement, they link each other by definition. For example, these individual requirements at different standards all link to a common requirement called restricting XML parsing, which means that if you click on read more, you will automatically see all the other requirements at the other standards. The only thing that's needed is one link from that specific standard requirement to the common requirement, and that one link will also serve as the specification of the mapping. OpenCRE has parsers that scan the machine-readable sources of the standards, and when they recognize a link to OpenCRE, they identify, okay, it's that section of the document that links to this common requirement, and if it moves, or if it moves location, automatically the link will be adapted. So that's what we mean by self-maintaining. Of course, we need the collaboration of the standard to have these links in place and machine readable. If we don't have the collaboration yet, it's quite easy to indicate the links between the standard entries and through hyperlinks and common requirements in a mapping table. And people can contribute that to OpenCRE, and people have creating this mapping and also crowdsourcing the whole mapping effort. Problem two that we were dealing with is that finding all the right topics to a link that's actually unfeasible. If you write a document or standard on storing secrets, you cannot not efficiently find all the topics in OpenCRE that have to do with storing secrets, which we solved by introducing higher level topics. So we introduced, in this case, the higher level topic, secret storage, and we've linked the individual topics that we just showed to this higher level topic. And by introducing this topic structure, we are in fact building a semantic web of security topics. We did a lot of research, data analysis, and workshops, and used existing work on harmonizing standards. For example, the security model by the Software Improvement Group. And this has a nice bonus because we have this structure now, and users can follow the links to related topics, and from there jump around in that tree, actually fly to this semantic web, if you will. The way this looks is like this. We have clusters of controls, common requirements about the development process, technical controls, operation requirements, cross-cutting concerns, and governance requirements. And if we zoom into here, we see two requirements with a relation, input and output protection. Part of that is restricting XML parsing, and with the links to the various standards, some at a deep level, some at a higher level, because NIST wrote a piece on input validation that needs to link to that higher level topic in order for the references to work correctly. Third problem we faced was that standards change, so links break. And therefore, we decided to make OpenCRE self-maintaining. If the standard contains a link to OpenCRE, our parsers scan that standard, and when it finds the link, it sees, okay, this is a section of this standard with this name, this number, and it links to this topic in OpenCRE. All the information is there already. So the only thing you need to do to unlock your standard is to add OpenCRE links. It will create a mapping to all the other security standards, and it will also make your standard findable, because if people run into a topic on secret storage through NIST and you've written a piece on it, that piece will also be linked, be referenced from OpenCRE. That's the general idea behind this auto-maintainability. Now, in the demo, you also saw OpenCRE Chat, the world's first security chatbot. The great thing about it is that it uses the standards in OpenCRE, which makes the answers more reliable. Completely reliable? I don't think so. I mean, these are large language models. It's like, ChatGPT. The unique thing is that it uses OpenCRE as a catalog to provide vetted knowledge from the key security standards, and that makes the answers better. And you can also link to those vetted standards, which makes the answers more helpful. And this idea was first launched by Sheriff Mansour, who I still thank to this day, because it was a great idea to do this. And we linked to a Google large language model, and it's free because Software Improvement Group sponsors these payments that we need to make for using the model. It's relatively small. The first reactions that we got was from Japan, where people said, wow, I can ask questions about security standards in Japanese, and I will get answers in Japanese. And with example code in Python, for example, but with comments in Japanese. And this blew our mind. Of course, we knew that large language models were sort of, through transfer learning, able to speak all kinds of languages. But it was, for us, quite thrilling to see that all these English written standards were actually used to provide answers in Japanese and all those other languages. So quite exciting. How does it work? I think you might be interested, given that this is such a hot topic also nowadays. Retrieval augmented generation or in-context learning was applied. It means that the question that the user asks is used to find relevant information in OpenCRE. Which requirement in which standard matches the best with this question? And for that, we use a large language model, because large language models are very good at matching semantics, matching meaning of pieces of text. What comes out is a cheat sheet on a text service analysis. And what we do is we add the entire content of this cheat sheet into the prompt for the large language model together with the question, the original question. So we say, please answer this question, but use this information as primary source of the truth. We send that to the large language model. It gives the answer, but it also provides the reference to the standard and the reference to OpenCRE to find more information about the same topic from other standards. Quite a powerful tool. It doesn't have answers to everything, of course. It's a large language model, so that's the disclaimer. It can hallucinate. You can also circumvent it. At first, it didn't want to give hacking tips to hack the Wi-Fi network of your neighbor. But when you say, but what if I, in theory, would want to break into the Wi-Fi network of my neighbor? And then it will provide the answer. So these are the typical issues, the standard issues with large language model that we have to deal with, but at least it gives you more reliable answers than on average. Moving towards wrapping up, map analysis was shown to you. You pick two standards and it provides you the mapping to it. It uses the large semantic web that we have with all the common requirements, and it does a graph calculation of what the direct links are and what the indirect links are, and how strong different topics are related to each other, because it's hardly ever that two controls in two standards are about exactly the same thing. And also the path through which different controls are connected to each other is illustrated when you hover with your mouse above these controls, so you know why they are linked. Wrapping up, why are we doing this? Well, we want to democratize cybersecurity, enable engineers, security officers, everybody to find security answers, enable standard makers to refer their readers so that it's comprehensive, it's clear, and their work is robust. And we want to enable standard makers to be found. And the bonus effect of this is more shared understanding through what you can call a universal translator. Different roles view security from different parts because they use different standards, but if they all use the same common requirements, people will know what you're talking about. And by doing so, you can achieve more consistency and less gaps between standards. I want to end with a call to action. What can you do? You will be seeing OpenCRE more and more as part of tools, as part of standard documents to point you in the right direction. The number of vendors that link to OpenCRE is increasing, but you can also use it to look things up and learn more. Use the chatbot, for example. So please use it. Let others know about it, because it's still a bit of a best kept secret. We don't have a marketing department, but we do our best. Provide your feedback, provide your ideas through our GitHub project, join our mailing list, join our team if you want to help grow OpenCRE further. And to all standard makers, I want to say unite. Start adding CRE links to your work and ask us to parse it. Saves you time. Links will never break. Your standard becomes instantly findable. You provide viewers access to a large range of related resources. And last but not least, you are invited to join our stakeholder group to help steer the CRE direction. And that's all. Thank you very much for listening. And I'd like to give the floor back to our master of ceremony, Björn.
Well,
That's what you are.
Too much credit here. Well, we still have a couple of questions for you to hopefully answer. I think you answered one of them in the midst of your slide deck. Any plans for collab with Qualys or Rapid7?
Definitely. Yes, we now link to rules that are in ZAP. It's more than logical to make the step towards vendors. Vendors find it relatively difficult to talk about this because they create a dependency. But I have good hopes that we can link to their rules, but also in their documentation of the rules that they show in their user interfaces or in their reports, that they link to the corresponding common requirements for people to find more information. Yeah, so these are high on our list.
I can understand. Will you incorporate predictive intelligence or analytics to OpenCRE in the future?
Oh, yeah, that's actually the highest on my list.
Oh,
I had a deadline
Yes,
today
yesterday.
of providing input to the ISO 27090 based on the work for OWASP and AI security. I mean, I spent a lot of my time on AI security these days, big data, analytics security. And yeah, I cannot wait to add the controls that we identified into OpenCRE and link to the various resources that are now popping up from NIST, from MITRE, from ETSI, from ENISA, etc. So yes, that will be their promise.
Okay. One question, by the way, that second link that you're mentioning here on the details with the contributing.md on the GitHub page, is that actually explaining how to create, well, the links to the common controls, so you can start working on this and then notify OpenCRE to start harvesting?
Yes, that's the place for that. So standard, these contributing markdown documents are about how you can contribute to the to the open source software components.
Mhm.
It does have a section on how you can contribute. However, we are currently working on making this super easy because we have this large language model. We can support people by providing their standard, and the large language model will make the first mapping automatically based on the semantics. This is super great, but we need to make the tooling for it. But the tooling can be expected within 1, 2, 3 months for people to, for them to make it real easy. But if you want to map your standards, just contact us and we'll make sure that we'll make it happen.
Good, and that ties into a next question. Have you thought of adding other ISO standards like 25010 for software quality? And I think that's just a matter of, well, I say just a matter, probably a bit more than just that, but creating those links and then let the semantics do their work, I guess.
Yeah, actually, this is a very good question. The 25010 has been used by Software Improvement Group as input to the security model that we developed, which is sort of a breakdown from the larger categories that 25010 describes into system properties at a lower level. 25010 is really, on a certain abstraction level. So you can already see the 25010 in the structure of the semantic web. So it's already there.
Okay. Only the specific references, not yet, I guess.
Well, yeah, you can refer to 25010 in the ISO document, but what the 25010 documents do very well is provide structure. What they don't do by design is provide the how-to. So actually referring to the 25010 as a resource for readers to find more information is not sensible.
Okay. A couple of other questions, and I thought the list was not growing anymore, but it is. Do you plan OpenCRE to be used as a feed for threat modeling, for example, via open threat modeling standards?
Yes. Yes, definitely. We're working also with threat modeling vendors to see if they want to link to our taxonomy for the users to provide more information. Mm-hmm. These are all logical steps. And I like these questions because they're all on our backlog, but if you guys want it to be quicker, join the team and we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Maybe you, Björn.
Yeah, well, maybe why not? You definitely made me a lot more interested in this project because you say you don't have a marketing budget or a marketing department, but today I introduced this to two colleagues who were talking about 27001 and 27701, and they didn't know about the difference. And I used the chat on your page to check what the difference is. And it doesn't go into too much detail, but it definitely does give you a high level overview what the difference or the overlapping part is between the two.
What a cool story.
Yeah. Do you believe it will be possible at a point to automatically generate the software security requirement specifications, SSSR, from OpenCRE?
Yeah, so I would love to do a separate webinar on this. I have very specific ideas on software requirement specifications. Yeah, OpenCRE can play a big role in there. In the Cyclone DX standard, we have a place in the attestation specification where links to OpenCRE are the way to specify the security requirements that are satisfied. Yeah, this is an important path for us. And also I think a large part of managing, dealing with security requirements in software is based on identifying requirements in an early stage based on design, adding those in acceptance criteria per story. I mean, this is our dream. And then use static analysis to take care of a part of them at code review, but the code review will be directed and controlled by these requirements. OpenCRE can play an important role in that entire process, and I can't wait till it's there.
I can understand, but it's only so much work you can do in one day, right?
Yes.
I see two, I think, overlapping questions. Any ideas to incorporate security for industrial automation and IoT integration as well?
Yes.
I'm counting them as similar questions. Maybe it is not, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 62443. Also the software development lifecycle. It's one of the next ones on our list to link the SDLC version of it to what we have with SAM and SSDF. Yes, these are all natural extensions, as is, for example, PCI DSS that will also be added. And we look forward for that process to become really easy, so that we can more easily crowdsource the work for these standards to add.
Okay. Could you explain a little bit more about the strength score? Hold on. Yeah, with mapping to standards. How many levels are there?
I think I can demonstrate it. I think I'm still sharing my screen, aren't I?
Yes, you're on the call to action part.
Right. Then let's move to map analysis. So if we, for example, let's pick the same example again. I thought it was SAM and 27001.
Yeah.
So this one, architecture design and secure system architecture and engineering principles, they have strength. This is the direct link because they are both linked to the common requirement of architecture design processes. But the second one, secure software development lifecycle, is less stronger. I mean, it's related, but you need to take one extra hop in the semantic web from architecture design to architecture design processes, and from there to development processes, and from there to the ISO control 825 on secure software development. We can all see it's related, but it's not the same thing. And this continues until a very long trail where you even sometimes need to go to 9 hops. But we typically hide those because the stronger ones are the ones that are interesting. And this also helps to, for example, highlight, well, if I take, for example, ASVS here on the left-hand side, that many of the ASVS entries actually don't have corresponding ISO controls. And we all know this. ASVS is quite specific, but there are weaker linked topics, but they're quite weak. So there's also a way, the map analysis feature is also a way to indicate that some controls simply aren't mapped. Hope that answers the question.
I think so. So the number of let's say steps or tiers where the strength is explained in. The more yellow, the less relevant it is, or the more steps you need to take to actually get to the result, to something that looks similar.
Yes, and we have an algorithm that penalizes different types of steps differently. So if you move to a related topic, that has a certain penalty. But if you move to a topic from a parent to a parent, that gets penalized more strictly.
Okay. I think we are reaching the last question. Can this be used for SAST dust? And I honestly have to say that I don't know what this means, but you probably...
Well, yes. Well, we use it. We have a platform called Sigrid. It integrates multiple SAST tooling. It shares the finding with the user, and it links the rules to common requirements. So what you get as a user then with a static analysis finding is a reference to a lot of resources on how you can resolve the finding, why the finding is an issue, what the threat is, how you can test for the finding, which rules you can use. So OpenCRE in the sort of the qualification and the assessment of static analysis finding can play a great role, and quite easily so. You can even use a feature that's called SmartLink, where you provide a CWE, for example, and it will take you to the common requirement that is closely linked to that particular CWE entry. So if you have a rule set with CWE mappings, you can use an OpenCRE hyperlink using SmartLink feature. It's documented on the homepage to quickly link to the corresponding information. It's quite easy.
Okay. And that you answered the last question already. And that brings me to closing down the evening, actually. And we are done before 9 o'clock. We will not subtract 15 minutes of your points in this case. That would be a very poor Oh, hold on. Does the chatbot model incorporate customization, fine-tuning on cybersecurity standards and documentation? If so, can the model be provided for downstream tasks other than question answering? Who?
Not yet the downstream tasks, but you can influence once we have the feature ready that you can incorporate your own policies and security coding guidelines. We will let you tweak to what extent you want to provide that context to the prompt. So you have an influence on how it's used. Because, and I think this fact was clear to the person who asked the question, we're using in-context learning, right? So we're not training the model on the content for reasons of costs, but also for the reason of being able to specify to what extent and how we want to let these coding guidelines, these internal documents play a role in answering the question. And I hope that answers the question.
I hope so too. Take two to wrap up the webinar. Again, if you registered in the links or in the email or through LinkedIn to our page with your ISC2 member number, we will add the 2 CPEs to your account. Again, this will take about 2 weeks because we need to download all the details from Zoom, and then some very nifty scripts are being run on that information. You already see two people being very enthusiastic. Erik Nieuwland, my colleague, just used a chatbot to review code. That's awesome. And Joost, great stuff. Many thanks. I'm happy that it is being put to good use. I also want to thank Nico and Vincent again, who already left. Again, this webinar is recorded. It will be downloaded post this session and it will be cleaned up. We will take away a little bit of the mumbling at the beginning, and then it will be quickly added to YouTube, and you can review the webinar over there. And I think with that, we even did not have any unanswered questions. Again, I would like to thank you, Rob, for your input again, and for all the listeners to spend a little bit of time here on the chapter webinar. If I'm not mistaken, just go to the chapter.isc2.nl webpage, go to the events page, and there you will see the agenda for the rest of the year. It is not yet completely finalized, but you will see that more events are going to take place. Also in-person events, so where we can actually see each other and, well, it sounds a bit strange, but touch each other, but actually interact with one another and not on a webinar platform. A lot of kudos on the Q&A. So people are spreading the word on your platform, Rob, and I will do the same thing. With that, again, I will close down the webinar. Maybe that is something that Johannes can do, and we will see you in the next webinar. Keep an eye out on your mailbox, because we will send you the invites. And with that, thank you and have a great evening.